Good early afternoon. First of all, I think it's important to understand, what people are foremost. And there's obviously no single answer to that that's correct, but the answer that I'm operating from in this discussion today is that we are fundamentally, each of us, is a data processing machine. And the purpose of processing that data in most people's conventional manifestations of what that means is to do things such as serve one's own interests, including the interests of one's people one cares for. And, if you broaden the definition of serving one's own interests sufficiently, then that means basically, it includes altruism, it includes morality, it includes all that sort of stuff, because obviously most people tend to feel better if they're engaged in basically good behavior, and people, as a general rule, agree that suffering is bad and that prosperity is good. They generally think violence is bad unless justified by specific circumstances, and even then only under the auspices of the state. There's less consensus about that, but I would say it's a general mores. So, the thing is, if you do broaden the definitions of one's own interests to be all-inclusive, then obviously you strip it of any real meaning. So, I think it's fair to say that there are additional things that one does with the data processing aspect of our natures. People battle their entire lives in support of specific abstract ideas which they believe in more or less depending on the kind of person they are. So, the point is that we're data processing machines engaged in a ongoing, lifelong behavior / existence comprised of inputting data, processing it, and some outputting, right? You don't have to output to be human. You have to input to be human, right? You have to have some sort of data input, even if it's just sense of touch. If you're blind and deaf and you have no sense of smell, or your nose is plugged up with cotton, and your tongue is wrapped with duct tape so you can't taste anything, except duct tape, I guess. Then you'll still get input somehow, right? The fact that we're data processing machines is evidenced by the sensory deprivation reality, right? That people who are kept away from any sort of stimulus suffer from something called sensory deprivation. What they really mean is data deprivation. As human beings, we need to process data. And we need an ongoing stream of new data. We have in our heads, and this is sort of where we tie in with the modern technology thing, is we have in our heads a limited capacity to retain existing data and to recall existing data. And it's remarkably bad. In fact, by any comparative measure, the human brain is an abject failure at its job, which is data processing, right? Because our memories are weak. They're very, very weak. My memory may be more weak than other people's about some things. People say I have a terrible memory because I'm forgetting, current stuff. But if somebody asks some random trivia question, I probably remember the answer to it, right? If it's one I know. So our memories are most effective, actually, in retaining for access little pieces of factual knowledge. And But however, note, one of the fundamental failures of the human brain is that there's no place to get an overview. You can't see the folder tree, you know? You can't see, oh, well, there's 1972's memories. And the thing is, what we have instead is originally language. That made everything possible, right? Is that once you have language, you can symbolize concepts and symbolize objects, etc. Once you can symbolize an object, then the next thing that's almost inevitable is that you come up with some sort of concept, such as, like, the first abstract concept, I guess, is negation. Negation is an abstract concept, and the notion that somebody is correct or incorrect, something is correct or incorrect, beyond just your immediate urge to make negative stimulation stop, right? Like if somebody's poking you with a needle and drawing blood, you don't need any abstract concepts to want to make that stop. But if someone is wearing one thong on one of his feet and a shoe on the other foot, or like I'm doing right now, I'm wearing mismatching thongs. I've got one blue one and one red one. I don't know if you can see that very well, but anyway. And let's say that bothers you for some reason. Well, you need an abstract concept of negation to make that stop, right? Because you can't just, I mean, you could run away, but that doesn't make it stop. Because it's not a behavior, it's a state of affairs, right? Anyway, so the encapsulation of abstract concepts and the retention of those abstract concepts for future use is the primary evolutionary job of the brain. But it's such a limited scope of data processing. And the human brain is very good at that. It's very good at learning things and applying them generally out, right? So you can learn something specific. Hey, I can smash this acorn with this rock. And the human brain is good at generalizing out to say, oh, well, maybe I can smash a walnut too. Okay, so generalizing, right? That's the idea of constructing meaning packets to become fully human or whatever. So that process passed orally for a long time. You know, it was just, or not even orally, but kinesthetically almost. Like, okay, oh, you want to know how to sew one of these baskets? Okay, well, get a reed and sit down next to me, and I'll show you. And then eventually people started passing down some things by language. I mean, one of the first written things that we have access to, there are two areas where writing immediately becomes like the dominant, the disruptive technology, right, that comes in and changes everything, in two areas at least. One is trade, the other is law, and that's like in the Fertile Crescent, the funniest named geographical region ever. In the Fertile Crescent, when they had that Hammurabi's Code, is that what it was called? Where it's like one of the first Babylonian texts. It was a bunch of laws, right? Why is that going to be the first thing? Because you kind of have to have language, written language, if you're going to have laws that function as either deterrents or as guides for action. So if you have a law that says you cannot steal, you cannot cut down the wheat in your neighbor's field because that's stealing. Well, nobody's gonna respect that rule if it's not referenceable. So, well, I didn't cut down your wheat, I cut down your sorghum. Oh, well, we need to add another, or sorghum, they add to the law, right? Oh, well, I didn't cut down your wheat or sorghum, I cut down your potato plants. But they're so low to the ground, why did you cut them down? Why not just dig up the potatoes? I just like cutting stuff down. Anyway, so those laws, in order to maintain persistence over time and to be able to function as codified abstractions, codified moral abstractions, right? Because, I mean, really, law stems from the notion that some things are ethical or not ethical, or fair or not fair. I think fairness is really the core underlying principle of all law, right? Because at the end of the day, the reason laws were in place was because people did bad stuff to each other. And in order to prevent that from occurring, at first, the people with power just said, okay, well, we're the only people who can do bad stuff to you. You can't do bad stuff back to us. So those were the first laws, right? And then eventually, many millions of times that was tried in many millions of places. And it always works for a little while, and then it falls apart. People don't like tyranny. People don't like being told what to do. People don't like being bossed around by autocrats. So, in all this rambling, where have I gone? Well, not very far. I've pointed out that humans can be viewed as data processing machines, and if we are data processing machines, we are very bad because we're really only effective at retention of abstract concepts for future use, utilitarian concepts, basically. Like not moral utilitarianism, but practical concepts. We've adapted that fundamental ability into absurd levels of abstraction, whereby our practical concepts now are things like this theory of truth and that theory of truth, right? And that's a very practical concept because it allows you to engage in analysis of all the other language. It allows you to meta up, so, and you want to be able to do that because at least you may not be any closer to the truth, but you're further from the lies. And that's a neat turn of phrase, isn't it? That's clever, I like that. Yeah, I've spent a fair amount of time patting myself on the back sometimes. So, we're data processing machines whose primary functional purpose actually seems to be harmony with other data processing machines. In other words, most people are driven more than anything else by the approval or disapproval of their fellows, right? The people around them. So that's what we're looking at. And yet, if we were much more effective data processing machines, we'd be much more effective at the second part of it, which is having everybody like everybody else and find value and appreciate the value that they find in everybody else, right? So, what I mean by that is I was listening to this audio tape, not an audio tape, I mean it was a CD, but I'm old, so I say audio tape. I was listening to a CD in the car, and it was a conversation between me and my wife from like at least 10 years ago, probably like 13 years ago or something. Maybe 12 years ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago. And we're arguing about the same shit that we argue about now, 13 years later. And it's like, you know what? Let's review our complete life history and Search arguments between me and Candace, 2000 and let's go last 12 years, 2003, from the Iraq invasion until now, and they all pop up, and we go, okay, major themes. Look, post-analysis themes, like, the vectors, not the warrants. Why are we still fighting the same shit? Why are we still repeating ourselves? Haven't we heard each other enough yet? And yet, here we are doing the same thing again. So, I think that if we really had access and were compelled to, if you had it in front of you, you'd be compelled to, right? If you had in front of you a full, like, this is my life, sort of, I picture this thing that you slide left and right, with the years, and you pull down a year, and then, the months come out, and you pull down a month and a day, or you can just search by conversation, like instant brain, everything access computer thing. Tell me everything, every time that Candace and I have thought about money. I don't know, like 5 times. That's relatively low. We don't really seem to fight about money. Tell us every time that Candace and I have thought about the proper tone of voice that one uses when one talks. And it's like, 7,432. That's going to change your behavior. If you had access to all that stuff and could actually reference that, it would change everyone's behavior. If you knew, but it's not even this, it's not even fear. I don't want it to be fear-based, but if you knew, for example, that every conversation you ever have with anybody, or every time you're even walking around and talking to yourself, that was being retained somewhere and could be accessed by you or anybody else. You need complete transparency for this to work, right? It has to be true for everybody. President, defense chiefs, Islamic terrorists, everybody. And if you had that, first of all, judgmentalism would go way, 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 way down, right? And shit that's not really criminal, but that people get in trouble for now, consensual stuff, would be completely wiped clean from the books, right? Because everybody's got their own little shit that they do on the side that's not exactly kosher, even if it's just like speeding or drinking too much on a Friday night, or going to some downtown underground sex club or something. Everyone's got something, even if it's super minor, like right away. I don't do any of those things. Especially not the last one. That's one area where I've never been inclined towards vice. But here's a vice, right? So, the point is, it's easy to judge when your own stuff is under wraps just by virtue of general polite society not digging into stuff that's uncomfortable for people, right? But if all of everyone's shit was out in the world, all of everyone's everything, every minute of every day of everyone's life was available for access. Wow, can you imagine what a world that would be? That would be some kind of place. It would be, that's what we should be. We expect that from our machines. We don't expect this computer to forget shit after a while, right? Like, oh, sorry, I forgot your file. I lost it. Yeah, I don't remember it anymore. But I needed that file. Well, I got the gist of it. I got kind of like a general concept of it. I can kind of go over more or less what it said with you. Well, that's not good enough. I don't want to have to write the whole thing again. I want to open my file. Sorry. Sometimes I just forget shit. No, we wouldn't tolerate that from our computers. And yet, that's the kind of creatures we are. Crazy, huh? Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about.